Chileans head to the polls to choose presidential candidates for November general elections. Hundreds of people have died and many others are still missing in Europe's recent floods. And at least 23 people have been killed by landslides in India's most populous city, Mumbay. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. We begin in Cuba, where thousands of government and Communist Party supporters have taken to the streets across the country to defend democracy and support the political model of the Caribbean nation. President Miguel Díaz-Canel and Cuban leaders have also joined the demonstrations in capital Havana on Saturday, where thousands of participants, mostly young people, emphasized the role of the United States sanctions and the harsh economic restrictions which have caused the worst crisis on the island for decades.
These riots, like last Sunday's events, happen when weak-minded people let themselves be influenced, so we are here to show that this is not the Cuban youth. Cuban youth think a little more. That's why I'm here.
In Mexico, a mass rally was held outside the Cuban embassy in the capital, Mexico City, to support the political stability of Cuba and to reject the U.S. blockade against the Caribbean nation.
Our support is more for the revolution. We know that there are shortages of medicine and food in various parts of the country, but this is thanks to the blockade that the United States has maintained against Cuba.
Since the triumph of the Cuban Revolution, I think it has shown us that everything Cuba has done has been for the benefit of humanity and the people who need it. And the Cuban medical brigades are proof of that.
In Chile, left and right-wing demonstrators have clashed during a march in defense of the Cuban Revolution. The demonstrations of both groups took place in front of the Cuban embassy in the capital city of Santiago. Right-wing sectors sparked violence and confrontations, while revolutionary groups demanded an end to the blockade imposed by the U.S. on the island for more than 60 years. Left-wing activists denounced that the White House is carrying out an international strategy to overthrow democratic governments that do not comply with their political interests. Chileans have gone to the polls for primary elections to choose presidential candidates for general elections on November 21st. Voters will choose between two main political coalitions, the left-center Approved Dignity Coalition and the right-center Go Chile Alliance. The two frontrunners in the race for the Approved Dignity candidacy are former student leader Gabriel Boric and Communist Party representative and mayor of Recoleta, Daniel Jaude. Former mayor of Santiago, Joaquín Lavín, heads the race for the Go Chile Alliance Party. And the presidential candidate for the Independent Democratic Union, Joaquín Lavín, invited citizens to participate in these primary elections.
Solamente dos cosas que decir. Uno,
there are only two things to say. One is to ask Chileans to participate. It's possible that today we are choosing the next president of Chile. Therefore, this election is an important one. I know that there are winter vacations, long weekends, but there is really no excuse. If you care about Chile, come and vote today. That's the call. We hope that during the day, people get excited, participate, vote, and that we have a high participation in these primaries.
Meanwhile, the presidential candidate for the Communist Party, Daniel Jaude, highlighted as historic the celebration of these elections and called on citizens to go to the polls on Sunday.
I would like to thank you all for your presence and call on the entire population of our country today, all of the neighbors, all of the people of Chile to participate. This is a historic opportunity to begin transforming Chile from our territories, from the communities, from the regions. Today will be a wonderful day with the fortune of the sun that will accompany us throughout the day. And therefore, I call on everyone to get up. Today is a beautiful day and we will make it to the end even more with more beauty.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has denounced terrorist groups financed by former Venezuelan politicians and supported by the U.S. and Colombian governments who had plans to assassinate him.
We have defeated the Bogota Axis, Miami, Madrid in one of their plans. They bet. There is evidence that this terrorist group is politically supported by a group of former members, by a group of right-wing politicians, and financed from Bogota, from Miami, from Madrid, directed through telephone system to attack, kill. They call it that the party started. The party in Caracas has already been known. Part had plans to assassinate me. How can you call criminals of this type who put their snipers to shoot at the highway, cars that were passing and killed taxi drivers and innocent people who were passing by the highway Caracas-La Guaira, the Cementerio address, the Paraíso address? As you can call people like this who had groups ready to set fire and attack the city, have only one qualification: murderers and terrorists, and you gave him a great defeat. Congratulations on his rise and continue in combat.
The interim Prime Minister of Haiti, Claude Joseph, has denounced attempts to divert the attention on investigations on the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. Joseph said that there are many clues about the assassination of the president and that the investigations are still underway to expose the main person behind the murder. He added that the security forces will not stop working to bring those responsible to justice. Following the assassination last week, the interim Prime Minister Joseph declared himself in charge and said the country will be under a temporary state of siege. And Haiti has started a general vaccine rollout on Saturday after health workers and senior citizens were vaccinated the day before. Hospital University of Peace is heading the vaccination campaign under the supervision of Haiti's health ministry. Earlier this week, Haiti received the first Moderna vaccine batch as part of a U.S. donation to the COVAX program. Haiti has reported more than 19,300 confirmed coronavirus cases and more than 480 deaths, amid the biggest wave of COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began.
Yes, I see that we have started well. We have made awareness where we the staff and went to the clinics not associated with a hospital to explain what the disease is and how to protect patients against it.
And we have more stories coming up after one break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Germany, rescue workers have toiled to clear up the damage laid by water on Saturday as the death toll from flooding in Western Europe rose about 180. Police say that more than 90 people have died in Western Germany's Ahrweiler County, one of the worst hit areas, and more casualties are feared. Another 43 people were confirmed dead in neighboring North Rhineland-Palatinate state, Germany's most populous.
In the background, we are hearing trucks being pulled out of the water. 28 vehicles have been reported here that were underwater, though in the meantime the water went down a bit. We don't know if there are any persons inside those cars, but we hope that everyone managed to get out.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has expressed horror at the surreal devastation of floods as she visited the area of Schuld, Western Germany. She called for an acceleration to the fight against climate change.
I have come here today and especially to Schuld with the Prime Minister to make it clear that we on a federal side naturally want to get a real picture of the shall I say, surreal, ghastly situation. This summer, with all the events we are experiencing in Germany, as well as the precipitation we are currently experiencing, show, if you believe the science, which I do, that it has something to do with the climate change. There are also very interesting explanatory models that describe why such cases of concentrated rain in one place occur, and that means we have to do even more.
Meanwhile, thousands of residents of affected areas of southern Netherlands have been allowed to return home on Saturday morning after being evacuated due to severe flooding. Prime Minister Mark Rutte's government has declared the flooding a state of emergency, opening up national funds for those affected.
The entire basement was flooded, and the damage is probably in the tens of thousands of euros. Apart from the emotional value, which I find more important, magazines, radio bulletins from 1960 until 1997 all vanished.
At least 23 people have been killed by landslides in India's most populous city, Mumbay. The Indian National Disaster Response Force said 17 of the deceased were killed in the coastal Mahul area when a landslide caused a wall to collapse on several homes. Rescue workers were still searching for more victims. Several others have sustained injuries and have been taken to a local hospital. Mumbai and its surrounding suburbs have been pounded by monsoon rains since Saturday.
A rescue and relief operation is underway. The National Disaster Response Force team is also at the site. We will complete the rescue operation soon.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Paris to protest French President Emmanuel Macron's plan to require a COVID-19 vaccine health pass. President Macron said this week that vaccine health passes will be required for entry to most public places, and all healthcare workers must be fully inoculated, sparking a rush to book appointments for the job. The new measures come as several European nations battle rising cases, blaming part of the highly transmissible Delta variant. France says Saturday it will require people not fully vaccinated and arriving from some European countries to show a negative COVID-19 test taken within the previous 24 hours.
I ask that people be given the freedom to choose whether or not they want to be vaccinated. No more and no less. A return to something that is constitutional. I am not opposed to the vaccine. If people want to get vaccinated, great.
I really feel like we are starting to infringe on everyone's freedom. I don't think we should have two opposite groups, the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated. I think it's up to each person to do what they want to do.
Meanwhile, the UK government has announced that people arriving from France must self-isolate for 10 days on entering Britain, even if they are fully vaccinated. Britain reversed a plan to ease travel restrictions on France just 2 days after they were due to start, citing concerns about a new variant of the coronavirus. The move comes despite the fact that France currently has lower rates of the virus than the UK, where the highly contagious Delta variant is driving a surge in infections. The French tourist industry has rejected this resolution.
I think it's a disaster. I think they should stop this whole thing. It's ridiculous now. We've got to live with the virus. We've got to learn it's a new thing. It's not going to go away.
Disappointing because I'm double vaccinated and I thought that as of Monday it would be all right and I'd be able to come back and not have to self-isolate.
Catalan firefighters have battled to contain a wildfire at a national park of Cap Creus in Girona, 2 hours away from Barcelona. Local media reported that 200 people had to be evacuated from their houses as flames approached residential areas. The area is a natural paradise attracting many tourists, especially during the summer. According to regional authorities, over 400 hectares have already been lost due to the wildfire.
This morning, we went to the market of Porto de la Selva. We finished shopping, then we went to have something to drink as usual. And when we were having coffee, we began seeing the smoke around 1 o'clock, and we saw the helicopters with the water. This morning, when we were at the beach, we saw a bit of smoke and then just smoke from the left and right. Since 1 o'clock and until now, totally out of control.
The world's top oil producers have agreed to boost output from August 2021. The Vienna-based group OPEC issued a statement after a meeting announcing that they have agreed to raise output by 400,000 barrels per day each month starting in August to help in the global economic recovery as the pandemic eases. The group also said it will set assets market developments in December, and the deal also extends a deadline on capping output from April 2022 to the end of that year.
So yes, we will keep the 400 on a monthly basis. We will review in December. We kept our window open for review.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 13 people have been killed and many others seriously burned after a fuel tanker exploded in western Kenya. The incident happened while residents of Malanga village in Kenya's Saya County were extracting fuel from the tanker after it was involved in an accident. This tragic event is not the first one to happen in Kenya. In 2009, at least 120 people were killed after a huge crowd descended on an overturned gasoline tanker, which then blew up.
The fire was so huge. We couldn't go any closer, and there was the first lot who succeeded by fetching the fuel. Those who came second in the lot are the ones who died there. There are motorbike riders, women, and children.
The Rwandan capital, Kigali, has been placed under a 15-day lockdown as the country battles a second wave of coronavirus. The country's health officials have announced that all movements outside homes in the capital will now require an approved permit from the police, except for essential service providers. Rwanda's hospitals have been overwhelmed with rising COVID-19 cases and are faced with a critical shortage of beds and medicines. The new restrictions will last until July 26th.
During these 10 days, what we are going to do is fight strongly for ourselves, even if the living situation will be bad. But we have to accept the change and protect ourselves, like washing our hands, wearing a mask, observing a social distancing. When those 10 days are done, we will go back to normal.
Residents in South Africa have cleaned up shopping centers and stores looted during a week of shocking violence that rocked the country and left more than 200 people dead. 8 organizations also handed out food in communities that had been cut off from main roads or where food shops were ransacked in the unrest. The violence, the worst in the post-apartheid South Africa, erupted after former President Jacob Zuma was sentenced to 15 months in jail for snubbing a corruption inquiry. His successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, said the riots were a coordinated and well-planned attack on the country's young democracy.
Yeah, it shows you the two sides of South Africa, the bad side and the good side. First of all, those people who were looting and burning stuff, those arsonists, they are bad people in the community. But now this then tells you, this then shows you that not all is lost. So the world is looking at us with those eyes, but we want to tell you that South Africa has a lot of good people and we have a lot of good stories to tell. And if people and communities work together, everything or anything can be achieved. My prayer is that this unity that is being showed here will not cease after we go back to normalcy.
And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has issued a warning to instigators of recent violence and looting as he joined post-riot cleanup efforts. The African leader vowed that his government was going to strengthen security to avoid racial conflicts after days of unrest, which saw several shops being violently looted. South Africa was gripped by more than a week of chaos as violence broke out after the former president Jacob Zuma was jailed for contempt of corruption commission. More than 200 people were killed as looters attacked shopping centers and torched key industrial infrastructure, as well as blocking trade routes.
We are all really concerned about what happened here, but we are also saying we have learned valuable lessons. We have learned important lessons. In the most important lesson, in the end, We must tighten up our security forces, but we must also ensure that the defense of our democracy is firmly in the hands of our people.
Portuguese-speaking countries have expressed concern over the recent deadly Mozambique insurgency. Members of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries have condemned violent attacks which left thousands dead and many families displaced in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province. The heads of states were meeting in the Angolan capital Luanda, where the African country took over the organization's rotating presidency from Cape Verde.
We condemn what is happening in Mozambique, the unqualified attacks, human and social sacrifices. But we need a joint action, whether from Africa or European countries. The CPLP has a key role to play.
At least 5 people have been killed in a bombing attack in Syria's Idlib region. A Syrian war monitor has reported that the bombing by government troops took place in a village in the last rebel-held enclave. Violence has been rising in recent weeks as the Syrian government continues fighting towards restoring control of the territory. According to the United Nations, more than 500 children were killed in Syria last year. The Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has been sworn in for a 4th term. The swearing-in ceremony was held in the presidential palace and attended by members of parliament, political figures, and army officers. Assad won 95% of votes in elections held on May 26th. He was first elected by referendum in 2000, following the death of his father, Hafez al-Assad, who had ruled Syria for 30 years. Still in Syria, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in capital Damascus on a state visit. The Chinese minister was received by Foreign Minister Bayal Mikad and later met with the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the government officials. The two countries enjoy mutual cooperation, which has seen China invest in Syria's several industries, which includes construction, car manufacturing, and telecommunications. Afghan security forces have claimed they managed to recapture 24 districts that have been seized by the Taliban in past days as fighting between the two sides continues. Addressing the media on the security situation in the country, a spokesperson for the Afghan Armed Forces, General Ajmal Omar Siwari, said they have retaken several districts which fell into the hands of Taliban fighters last week. The Army General called for permanently ceasefire to the conflict, but emphasized that his troops were ready for both peace or war.
The people of Afghanistan permanently demand a ceasefire, but the security forces are ready for peace and war. We are ready to defend our people. A large number of the districts have been recaptured by the security forces. The total number of recaptured districts is 24.
Representatives of the Afghan government and the Taliban have met in Qatar's capital Doha to resume talks as fighting between the two groups continues. Several high-ranking officials and negotiators from the Taliban's political office in Doha met at a hotel for the talks anticipated to bring a lasting solution to the war. The talks resume at a time when the Taliban continue gaining ground in Afghanistan. Several countries have in recent days evacuated their citizens from the war-torn country due to the intensifying fighting. And we come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.